Imagine standing on the deck of a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The sails are set, the cargo is intact, and a warm meal is sitting on the table in the captain's cabin. The logbook is open, the ink barely dry. Everything is exactly where it should be, except for one thing. Every single soul on board has vanished. No struggle, no blood, no sign of a storm, just gone. This is not a ghost story or a tall tale from a sailor's tavern. This is the true story of the Mary Celeste, the greatest maritime mystery in human history, a puzzle that has baffled scientists, historians, and detectives for over 150 years. To understand the tragedy of the Mary Celeste, we must first look at the man who commanded her, Captain Benjamin Briggs. Briggs was not a man of superstition or recklessness. He was a seasoned, God-fearing mariner from Massachusetts, a man who believed in discipline and the steady hand of Providence. In November 1872, Briggs prepared his ship, a 100-foot brigantine, for a voyage from New York to Genoa, Italy. On board with him were his wife, Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, and a hand-picked crew of 7 experienced sailors. The cargo they carried was dangerous, 1,701 barrels of raw industrial alcohol. It was a volatile shipment, but Briggs was confident. As the ship left New York Harbor on November 7th, the weather was fair and the spirits were high, but they were sailing into a void from which they would never return. For weeks, the Mary Celeste battled the Atlantic. We know this from the ship's log, which recorded a standard, if somewhat rough, crossing. The final entry was dated November 25, 1872. It placed the ship just 6 miles off Santa Maria Island in the Azores. The entry was mundane, simple coordinates and weather notes. There was no hint of panic, no mention of a leak, no sign of a mutiny. 10 days later, on December 5th, another ship, the Dei Gratia, spotted a speck on the horizon. The captain of the Dei Gratia, David Morehouse, was a friend of Captain Briggs. He noticed the Mary Celeste was sailing erratically, her sails torn and fluttering in the wind. When the crew of the Dei Gratia boarded the vessel, they expected to find a scene of carnage or a ship ravaged by a storm. Instead, they found a ghost. The ship was eerily silent. The crew's waterproof boots were lined up by their bunks. The captain's personal belongings, including his harmonium and his wife's sewing machine, were untouched. Most shockingly, there was plenty of food and water, enough to last for 6 months. The only things missing were the lifeboat, the ship's sextant, and the people. The discovery sparked a media firestorm and a grueling legal battle in Gibraltar. The British authorities were convinced of foul play. They suspected the crew of the Dei Gratia of murdering the passengers for the salvage reward. They suspected a mutiny where the sailors got drunk on the industrial alcohol and slaughtered the Briggs family. But the evidence didn't fit. The alcohol was industrial, poisonous to drink. There were no signs of violence on the ship, no broken furniture. As the decades passed, the theories grew wilder. Some suggested a giant squid had plucked the crew from the deck one by one. Others spoke of sea monsters, alien abductions, or the Bermuda Triangle, though the ship was nowhere near that infamous stretch of water. However, modern science and historical detective work have provided us with a more grounded, yet equally terrifying possibility. It all goes back to those 1,701 barrels of alcohol. When the ship was later examined, 9 of those barrels were found to be empty. Unlike the others, which were made of white oak, these 9 were made of red oak, a more porous wood. It is highly likely that some of the alcohol had leaked out and vaporized in the heat of the hold. Imagine being Captain Briggs. You hear a low rumble from below decks, the sound of expanding gas. You smell the overpowering, invisible fumes of highly flammable vapor. You fear an imminent explosion that would blow the ship to splinters. In a moment of absolute panic, Briggs might have ordered everyone into the small lifeboat attached to the main ship by a sturdy tow rope, planning to wait until the fumes cleared. But then the Atlantic showed its teeth. Perhaps the rope snapped in a sudden squall. Perhaps the wind picked up and the Mary Celeste, with her sails still set, simply pulled away from the heavy, overcrowded lifeboat. Can you imagine the horror? Watching your home, your safety, and your only hope of survival drift away into the mist, leaving you bobbing in a tiny wooden crate in the middle of a vast, hungry ocean. The tragedy of the Mary Celeste isn't just about a missing crew. It's about the fragility of human life against the backdrop of the infinite sea. It reminds us that even with the best equipment, the most experienced leaders, and the clearest of plans, the world remains a place of unpredictable shadows. The ship itself seemed cursed. After the incident, she was sold and resold, gaining a reputation as a hoodoo ship. Owners went bankrupt, captains died unexpectedly. Eventually, in 1885, her final captain intentionally ran her aground in Haiti as part of an insurance fraud scheme. But even then, the ship refused to go quietly. The insurance company discovered the fraud, and the captain died in disgrace shortly after. Today, the wreck of the Mary Celeste lies beneath the sands off the coast of Haiti, but her story remains afloat. It is a story that forces us to look at the horizon and wonder what happened in those final, frantic moments. Did they die quickly in the cold water, or did they drift for days, watching the sun rise and set over an empty sea? The sea does not give up its secrets easily. It swallows the evidence and washes away the tracks. The Mary Celeste remains a monument to the unknown, a reminder that some doors, once closed, are never meant to be opened again. We are left only with the silence of the Atlantic and the haunting image of a ship sailing perfectly, beautifully, and completely alone.